Let's continue. So what is arson? Arson is setting on fire something intentionally, setting a property on fire. Arsonists often do this because they're broke and need insurance money. This often occurs as hate crimes with churches, and it's a form of mental and psychological illness. What is vandalism? So this is the willful destruction of private property, such as spray painting of school, tearing apart school and mess with computers, writing on desks, or even burning across on African American churches, homes. What is larceny? So larceny is stealing money, a car, property, or anything, stealing. The crime depends on the value, and it is the unlawful taking of something, such as shoplifting. What is concealment? Concealment is simply the attempt of shoplifting. Embezzlement is the unlawful taking of someone's money, entrusting someone to hold money for you, and then stealing it. That's what embezzlement means. What is robbery? Robbery. So this is the unlawful taking of property. Stealing a jacket, shoes, or immediate possession from someone. So don't get confused. Don't get larceny and robbery confused. Larceny is not taking it from the possession directly, whereas robbery is directly taking it from the person. What is extortion? So this is blackmailing or threatening someone in order to obtain property. So extortion, blackmailing. What is burglary? This is going into your residency, unlawful entry to your cause, unlawful entry to cause felony. Forgery is signing someone's name on their behalf without their consent. What is uttering? Uttering, we didn't really go into that, but I think you should know it. It is showing or offering a document, a fake document, after it's being forged. It goes with forgery, so it's pretty much just trying it and giving it in once it's been forged. It's an actual act of forgery. What is unauthorized use of a vehicle? Taking someone's car without the owner's consent. It's normally temporarily. Carjacking would be this. So as opposed to, it wouldn't be robbery, because robbery you would steal it forever, but then for the unauthorized, you simply you take the keys and go, but then maybe you're not for it. Maybe you may come back, or it's something temporary, but it's nonetheless stealing. What is an alibi? So this is evidence that a person who has been accused of a crime was not actually present at the place or location of this crime. So let's say I committed a crime, but my best evidence would be that I have an alibi because I was not there. I was in Germany doing something, so therefore I am not guilty. What is self-defense? This is acting for one's survival. Someone who committed an act but isn't criminally responsible would have to be what? A child, someone who cannot reason at an early age, or someone who has mental retention issues. So what is infancy? These are children under the specified age. What is the insanity defense? This is saying that if someone has a mental breakdown but not a mental state. What is intoxication? So this is when they claim that they were drunk on alcohol or high on drugs, that they didn't know what they were doing. What is entrapment? So entrapment is where the defendant admits to committing a crime but claims that he or she was induced or persuaded by a law officer to commit the crime. This has to involve the law officer. What is duress? So duress is as a result of coercion or a threat of immediate danger to life or the person's safety. What is necessity? This is when someone is compelled to react to a situation that is unavoidable in order to protect life. So remember that necessity is to protect life in general, whereas duress is to protect one's life, one's personal life. That's the main difference. So something that is federal crime. Something is a federal crime if it takes place in a federal land, whether it's national forest or an Indian reservation, etc., or involves federal officers, a crime in which defendant crosses state lines, or a crime dealing with immigration and customs violations. So what happens during an arrest? So during an arrest, the accused is taken into custody. What happens with search and seizure? So this is saying that evidence that is seized illegally cannot be used against you, and that's not the exclusionary rule. So you should know the exclusionary rule. Officers must have the document present and to see how strong or bona fide. Bona fide means in good faith. The evidence is, so the officers must prove this. What happens when searching without a warrant? To see if a crime has been confirmed, we look for either probable cause or reasonable suspicion. These are the two ways that we can. So in TSA, for instance, when you're at the airport, you have consented to search. This may also occur in a hot pursuit when when the police is on the run and they can act out and they can search. Also, it can happen at schools, since they can search on the parents' behalf and they have the permission to do that. What normally happens before the trial or the pre-trial? So normally there's the booking, which is when they check you in after the arrest and gather all the information necessary pertaining to the individual. You could be released on bail at this moment. Then you have the preliminary hearing, which is where they determine whether a trial is necessary. This is where you can get an attorney. Most people never go to trial as they plea out. That is, they agree to being guilty. What is null contendere? Null contendere means saying that when someone admits to the conviction, however, they do not admit to guilt. So they're saying, I committed that, but I'm not guilty. So the person is still subsequent to punishment. It's pretty much equivalent to guilty somehow. So what are pretrial motions that they can do? So what are some things that like the lawyers can do when they're in pretrial? So they can change the venue if they think it's biased or controversial. They can delay if one is not prepared for it. They can motion for a discovery of evidence. So they want to search the opposing party's evidence, or they can suppress evidence if it was illegally obtained or other method. What is the difference between a grand jury and a petit jury? So the main difference is that a grand jury is formed of 70 to 24 people, and are the ones who determine whether there is enough evidence to have a trial. And this occurs normally during the pre-trial, and you may be called and be there for a month, as opposed to a petit jury, which is normally probably roughly 12 people, I believe, and they determine whether the defendant is guilty or not. So that's the main difference, and it's only for one time, so it's less time rather than coming there every month, like for a whole month. What must outweigh what in order for someone to get the death penalty? So the aggravating circumstances must outweigh the mitigating circumstances, meaning there must be more grave causes than there are in mitigating. What is suspended sentence? So this is something that you'll serve it later, not at this time. What is probation? This is when you're free, but you have to control things as you're being supervised. What is home confinement? This is when you wear an echo bracelet to determine your location. Well, that's pretty much your stay at home, and these are the different sentences. This is one of them. What is restitution? It's just simply saying paying money to recover any damages that were made. What is community service? This is self-explanatory. What is work release? This entails working during the day and coming back to jail at night. What is imprisonment? This is simply jail time. Okay, what's a juvenile delinquent? This is a minor who commits a crime that would be committed by an adult. What are the status offenses? This is non-criminal act that is considered a violation of law, only because it is committed by a minor. Some could include violating curfew or the underage use of alcohol. That would be a status offense. What are some notable differences for adult and juvenile courts? So in adults, there are bookings, whereas juvenile, there is only initial hearings. So we're simply talking about the process here that they both must go through. In adults, there are arrests, preliminary hearings, bails, and bench trials. And in juvenile, there are only adjudicatory hearings, if I said that correctly. In adults, there are formal convictions, and in juvenile, there's only disposition. So once you're at the disposition level, you will either be consisting of a juvenile institution, or you either go to probation with conditions. So it's less complicated than the adult system. However, know that a minor can definitely be tried as an adult, depending on it all takes place in the preliminary hearing. What are the three types of torts? So we have intentional torts, which is actions that are taken deliberately to harm another person or their property. You have negligence, which is a conduct that falls below the standards set by law, protecting others from a reasonable risk of harm. And you have strict liability, which is liability without fault, which is applied to unhazardous activities. So what are some torts that harm people? You have battery, assault, emotional distress, false imprisonment, and defamation. False imprisonment is wrongfully and intentionally confining another person against their will. Defamation, know what that is. This is pretty much acts that harms a person's reputation. And defamation can either be spoken, which is known as slander, or it could be written, which is known as libel, if I said that right. What are some torts that harm property? So we have real property, personal property, and intellectual property. So for real property, this is simply saying the land and items that are attached to it, such as trespassing when someone enters another property without their permission, attractive nuisance, which is saying that think of a pool. Let's say a family has a pool and that child goes in and dies because he drowns because it looks so nice for some reason. So landowners must have a reasonable care to eliminate a dangerous condition on their land. What are some personal property torts? So we have conversion, which is the unlawful taking of another's property, stealing, pretty much. What are some intellectual property torts? So we have some things we have to consider for this are the patent, which protects useful inventions, process, or machines. We have copyright, which is the legal right granting the creator of an original work exclusive rights to determine whether this original work may be used by others. But the violation of that would be infringement, which is simply the person who uses copyrighted work. What are some defenses to torts? So we have consent, which is where the plaintiff simply consents to that. You have privilege, which is when a person justifies the conduct that would otherwise be a tort. So this person may be from like a newscast, or they may have the authority to do whatever they did because they've got the privilege to do so. You have self-defense, which is when one can use reasonable force to protect or defend oneself. You have defensive property, which one can use reasonable force to defend one's home. What things must be considered for negligence? So the duty, where the defendant owed a duty to a plaintiff. A moral obligation is different from a legal duty. A breach of duty. The defendant's conduct breached that duty, or broke. The action or inaction violates a reasonable standard of care. Causation. The defendant's conduct caused the plaintiff harm. This is proof that defendant's acts cause harm. This is simply what causation is saying. There are two elements of causation that maybe you should know, this being cause and fact, which is saying that if the harm would not have occurred without the harm, then the act is the cause. And proximate cause, which is the connection between these. Damages. The plaintiff suffered actual losses. So what is the reasonable person's standard? So this is not the standard of the average person, but rather a standard by which a person considers how likely a certain harm is to occur and how serious the harm would be. So what are some defenses to negligence? So we have contributory negligence, where the plaintiff may not recover damages if the plaintiff contributed to anyway. You have comparative negligence, where they divide the loss according to the degree of responsibility. And you have assumption of the risk, where the person voluntarily encounters a known danger and decides to take the risk. So what are some examples of strict liability? So we have dangerous activities, such as where harm cannot be eliminated without reasonable care, such as dynamite to demolish a building, animals that can harm caused by untamed pets. We have defective products, which is the legal responsibility of manufacturers for injuries caused by defective products. So these are some examples. Maybe you should know one of them. I don't know. Up to you. What's a contract? So this is an agreement between two or more persons to exchange something in value. What does it mean to be breached? So when an contract is breached, it means to fail to live up to a promise, breaking it. What's being competent? So you have to be this to enter a contract. You have to be competent to enter a contract. You cannot be mentally ill or intoxicated because you're not in your right mind. What does it mean for a contract to be ratified? It means to be formally approved. What's an unconscionable contract? When a court considers a contract unenforceable because it's unfair, harsh, or oppressive. What's a fraud? These are false statements about an important fact that is made to induce or persuade a person to agree to a contract. What is rescission? So this entails asking the court to cancel the contract. What is restitution? This is ordering the person you are suing to give back, refund, any money you have already paid. What is specific performance? When the buyer asks the court to order the seller to carry out the specific terms of the agreement. So the person is asking to do pretty much go through the contract, whatever was laid out in the contract. What is the duty to mitigate? This is usually requires an injured party to take reasonable steps to mitigate damages or make it less severe. Excuse me. So for advertising, what is telemarketing? So this is the practice of selling or marketing goods and services by the phone. What is door-to-door selling? This could be Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormons, or even solar panels, where people are pretty much going through every door and offering the services. Then you have puffing. Puffing is where these are ads based on the seller's opinions, personal taste, or obvious exaggerations. So you should probably know more about this advertising, but these are just the main ones that I could get. So, yeah. Good luck, guys.